Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime. It is the 3rd of April 2024. And of course, every Wednesday you have Global Today coming your way, where we take a critical analysis of what is happening as far as foreign policy is concerned, defense and security. As always, we hang out with a doyen of knowledge when it comes to diplomacy, security and foreign policy. And we'll be talking momentarily to Dr. Ken Mbongi, who is a historian, also head of department at that School of History and Anthropology that is at the Nairobi University. We'll be joined also by Professor Macharia Munene, who is a historian as well. And we'll be joined by Farah Malim, who is Member of Parliament, Dadaab, and also international relations analyst, especially on the Horn of Africa. This morning also I can see a message from Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is feeling rough, so will not be able to join us today, and we wish him well as well. Right, we shall be showing you what is in the dailies much later in the course of the program, as I try and put out my ducks in a row here. Technology is failing me, but I can just give you an inkling of what is headlining the front pages of the dailies this morning, especially beginning with the Standard is all about Raila's party, which there seems to be inside wrangles about power sharing and power struggle in Raila's party. That is what the Standard is holding for us today. Also, just looking at the Daily Nation, let me just pick up the hard copy so that I can prime you on what you can expect and much later. And that particular, well, that is not my voice, as you can hear it, but just technology there. So the Standard, I was mentioning, inside power struggles in Raila's party. That is what is on the front page of it. Standard today. MPs plot to control 96 billion shillings. Roads Kitty. That is what is headlining the front page of the Daily Nation today. And also looking at the Star, we have elections or election headache as UDA holds crisis talks. This is what the Star is holding for us this morning. I'll be able to beam that much later. Robbery without violence is what the People Daily is holding for us as well. Workers reel in shock after tax collector raids pay slips to deduct statutory 1.5% housing levy from their March salary after President Ruto effected law. That is another story that you want to follow inside the People Daily. Hukumiwa kuhubiri is about a clergy who has been, of course, sentenced to be preaching about sex or sexual offense. This is after he was found guilty of that particular act, and now the judge has told him, or he has actually given that particular authorization that he should be, or directive that he should be preaching and educating people about sexual offense. That is in Taifa Law. You can read all about it this morning. And the US is flagging Kenya over bribes, extortion and public tenders as well. This is another story you want to follow inside the Business Daily this morning. So let me not just read all of them so that we can be flowing with you as when we have the connection back, so that we can actually show you what we do have there. But before we head there, let's see what the weather is holding for us today, so that you can know what to wear and what not to wear. The weather has been a bit crappy, or a bit cold. Let's see how it will be today. Yeah, so I've done away with the monkeys on the line. My reconnection is back. So here we have the papers fresh off the press, and we begin with the Standard today. Inside power struggles in Raila's party is what is on the front page of the Standard this morning. And it's all about succession tremors, as they will put it here on the sub-headline. Since Odinga announced his quest for AU top job, his charges have been restless, plotting to succeed him. And today, he has a chance to arrest the internal party turmoil when he chairs a meeting of its top organ. And you have a story on page 8 and 9 of the Standard today. Also, call of strike, doctors told a state to settle arrears, deploy interns. The government last night said it was addressing the concerns raised by doctors, even as rival submissions in court by doctors. The Health Ministry and county governments laid bare the medics' demand and position of the authorities. You have a story on page 2 and 3 of the Standard this morning. And also looking at the side by Ruto picks KRA chairman to lead UDA polls. That is the story that you want to follow inside the Standard today. Appointment of Revenue Boss Anthony Maura to lead UDA party polls, seen as a strategic move to stem internal discord. You have a story on page 9. New bill. It's a new bill seeking jail for IBC bosses who bungle polls. Bill proposes to make it an offense for the staff of the Electoral Commission who unreasonably delay the declaration of results or knowingly alter declared results, among other issues. You have a story on page 7 of the Standard today. Looking at the teaser on top here, joy and pain of raising children in foster care. There's a special report here. You want to read it all spread out on page 10 of the Standard. And youngest president sworn in. We'll give you that story as well much later in the course of the program today. That is President Faye of Senegal. Remember, you can get all the wiser today as far as entrepreneurship is concerned. Enterprise magazine comes in handy for you, and it's focused this morning on SMEs. Ghana's city take on rivals. That is on page 32 of the Standard today. Let's move on and see what we have on the front page of the Daily Nation. This is what you're waking up to on the front page of the Daily Nation this morning. MPs plotting to control 96 billion shillings roads kitty is what is hogging the spots today. Legislation proposed amendment coincides with steep rise in allocation to Kera. That is what the flag is reading there. And looking at the sub-headline, skimming, lawmakers are planning to change the law to make it mandatory for the Kenya Roads Board to consult them on road works across the country, even as they seek to hold sway of the implementation of such products in their constituencies. A key campaign issue that will hand them an advantage over rivals in the next polls. You have a story on page 10 of the Daily Nation this morning. Planned party polls acid test for Ruto Raila is another story there. It says President William Ruto and opposition leader Raila Odinga are facing a litmus test ahead of the party's election set to begin this month. The president's United Democratic Alliance and Mr. Odinga's Orange Democratic Movement are set to hold elections at a time when there are internal leadership wrangles. While in UDA, there are silent fights as regional leaders claim various slots at the national level. Mr. Odinga's planned exit if he wins the African Union Commission chairperson seat, and has already seen various leaders campaign to replace him as party leader. You can follow the story on page 4 and 5 of the Daily Nation this morning. And looking at the teaser as well on top here, doctors strike, state releases funds for interns. 2.4 billion shillings what the government has released to facilitate hiring of intern doctors. This is on the back page of the Daily Nation. On the sidebar, insecurity. State changes stuck in war against banditry. The government is considering new measures to deal with resurgence of attacks in the banditry prone, North Rift region, after President William Ruto ordered top security chiefs to end the menace. That story on page 8 of the Daily Nation. And how to keep your children or child out of trouble this school holiday. I know they're at home and you're wondering, what do I do now to keep them busy and keep them out of the house so that at least I can have sobriety and peace of mind? You can follow the story on page 2 of the Daily Nation. Priest sentenced to spread quote-unquote Gospel of Sexual Offences Act. The High Court in Mombasa has sent a Catholic priest on a rare 3-year mission to educate congregants about the Sexual Offence Act after it found him guilty of an offense under the law. And you have a story on page 3 of the Daily Nation. Interesting story there. You can read on that particular story, and I don't know, maybe Dr. Ken Obongi will tell us what he thinks about that particular sentencing. If you've been found culpable, then you become the teacher. You're the one who's actually committed that particular offense. So go tell the laity, the congregants, teach them about sexual offense, you being an example. What do you think about that?
Like sending an ahina.
It's like sending to the goats.
To teach them on how not to eat meat. That's an interesting one.
For 3 good years.
For 3 good years. I want to believe that they confirmed that he had reformed and changed his wayward ways before they send him out.
This is a very interesting turn of events there, because when you say he's reformed, where was the reform?
That's it.
I mean, what time has he taken to actually reform for him to be given this particular
No, we presume that we have made that decision, thought through it, and confirmed that what they were doing is right and also is within the morals that should govern the religious institutions. Because this is a guy who, I could believe, needed to be separated from the rest of the society, and also helped to really come out of this habit of feeding on the flock that he's supposed to take care of.
Well, I don't know. Maybe Kenyans also will need to tell us what they think about this particular mission that the High Court has given this particular Catholic priest who was found guilty of sexual offense,
to read the judgment
defiling a 16-year-old, and now you're given that particular mission to go and preach about Sexual Offences Act, you being the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Well, you know what to do. You'd have a show with us. You can hit us on our X, that is at KT News as well. That is on page 3 of the Daily Nation this morning. All right, let's continue our pace with the conversation. And this is a Daily Nation. You can grab a copy for those stories. Looking at the Star as well, election headache. It says, as UDA holds crisis talks, this is a splash. Democracy, fear abound that the contested nature of polls could lead to chaos. That is what the flagger is reading there. ODM, UDA gearing up to bite the bullet, hold the normally chaotic and divisive party polls. And this story is on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. Tale of suffering patients as doctors strike grinds. It grinds on, and you can see them, that is the doctors there. These are actually nurses, intern nurses, demonstrating outside Parliament building in Nairobi yesterday over delayed posting and allowances. And that story continues on page 2, despite the fact that we have some modicum of measures that is coming from the government, proffering some allowances to the interns. The doctors have stoutly denied that, and we'll give you that story. They've declined that particular offer by the government. Robbery without violence. This is what is on the front page of the People Daily. This is all about taxes. Workers reel in shock after tax collector raids payslips to deduct statutory 1.5% housing levy from their March salary after President Ruto effected law. You have a story on page 4 of the People Daily. That is robbery without violence. And you can read all about it. As I mentioned on page 4, Harvey court case throws hiring of judges in limbo. That is on page 21 of the People Daily. Top UNESCO World Heritage Sites of 2024. They're all tucked away on page 21. That is a shelf fact inside the People Daily. And Ruto sets stage for cleanup in UDA. Party decides to hold its delayed elections starting this month through to August after President chairs the National Steering Committee. This was bound to be happening in December last year, but of course it has been delayed. So that will run from July to August, and also ODM will be holding also their party elections as well. Gory accident that happened yesterday, 13 killed, 60 others injured in accidents. Officials blame carnage on speeding, learning discipline, reckless and drink driving. I think now we just need to satiate this country in prayers, so to speak, so that we can drive away this menace that now is becoming such a worry when we are on the roads. We are not sure of our safety, Every day we wake up to people dying. This happened yesterday. Also remember, we had a student also from Chavakali who was killed. That is the day before yesterday. That bus was coming from Kisumu, Easy Coach that overturned, and one student lost his life coming from Kisumu to Nairobi. So 13 other passengers as well died yesterday. As you can see, this wreckage, devastation of that particular accident yesterday. Something has to be done. So while you're buckling up this morning, remember, be careful. Defensive driving, you never know who's on the road, a drunkard, a depressed, mentally ill person. Well, we don't know the current state of play of the current drivers that we have on the roads as well. This is the People Daily. Taifa leo hahukumiwa kuhubiri, right? That is what we have on Taifa leo, and this is what we're talking about with Dr. Mbongi here. Padri wa kanisa Katoliki mjini Mombasa aliyepatikana na hatia ya kumdhulumu kimapenzi msichana mwenye umri wa miaka 16 amepewa adhabu ya kifungo cha nje, ambapo anahitajika kuwaelimisha waumini wake kuhusu sheria ya makosa ya dhulumu za kingono. That is the story that you want to follow on page 2 of Taifa Leo. I don't know what you think about that, and you can read all the details there. Uchaguzi UDA mashinani ni kwa awamu. That is what Taifa is holding for us this morning. Let's buckle down to some business. US flags Kenya over bribes, extortion in public tenders. That is what we have as a splash on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Top official says US firms asked for bribes to secure deals. US includes an anti-corruption clause in New Deal. Maybe I can just zoom in and read together what it says here. That US firms are losing out on big contracts in Kenya due to bribe requests and extortion from top government officials in what has tilted scales in favor of foreign contractors willing to pay to secure tenders. The American government says in a new report. The US has also flagged political interference in Kenya's judiciary and extortion in public contracts, warning that the vices pose a barrier to investment inflows, even as the two countries negotiated new trade and financing deals with President William Ruto's government. Corruption, it says, remains a substantial barrier to doing business in Kenya. US firms continue to report challenging competing against foreign firms that are willing to ignore. And you have the story on page 2 of the Business Daily this morning. Faramali, when we wake up to such depressing news that you can't do anything in this country unless you part with some money. Foreign investment is, of course, taking flight, as we can see it from the Ruby Security Exchange. Just last week, we had also the report from ESCC showing how, as a country, we're steeped in corruption, so backed into a system. We think we need to have such a paradigm. I don't know if it's a mental psyche paradigm shift. I don't know if it should be a generation exit, because it seems the current crop of leaders, and even from the private sector, from the public sector, everyone is embroiled in corruption. It's a worry that if you are a straight person or not embroiled in corruption, you look like an outlier. Good morning, good to see you.
Morning to you, good to see you too. Well, we are one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And thank you, Professor. We have been in that spot. I don't know if they've overtaken Nigeria. Have we overtaken Nigeria? I know we have not overtaken Somalia, still the most corrupt country in the world.
We are doing very well.
We do very well.
Almost.
Yes. We're literally running past so many of them. I mean, the way we pip other, what do you call, athletes onto the finishing line and always come up with gold. We've been trying to do that in corruption for quite a while now. And I think we under the 2010 Constitution, we addressed that issue. Mm-hmm. That's why we created the independent offices, so that the executive cannot manipulate them. So that when there's an independent office, somebody who doesn't take orders from anybody else except the confines of the law that he operates under, will do the right thing. But what did we do? We created a very independent judiciary. We created so many independent offices. All we did is that we devolved and spread. The same way we spread power, we also spread corruption. We allowed these offices, particularly the judiciary, we allowed these officers to operate with impunity and maintain still, instead of a big man up there directing them what to do, this time they decide what they have to do, and that's where the corruption is. The judiciary was supposed to have cured this problem. Every time there's a hanky-panky business, anybody can rush to the courts, and the courts then will say, okay, this is not right, and puts a stop to it. But when the courts become part of the mess, the rot, and they also become basically very active players in that ill, in that vice, then of course we have a problem. Because that is the place where you resort to, that's the place you go and seek redress. But where you're going to seek redress, you run from the thugs to the police station so the police can protect you from the thugs. But if the thugs are residing in the police station, then what do? There's nowhere to run to, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we have a problem. I have no doubt in my mind. We have a serious problem.
Right.
And we can't put a square on the executive, by the way. The executive has a limited role. We made sure under the 2010 Constitution, the executive has a limited role in these things. Parliament has a limited role, other than making the law itself. And then created these independent offices, and then proceeded and created what you call a judiciary that, for all intents and purposes, was supposed to be free. Now, that judiciary is not free. And, last time I said we don't have a system or a mechanism for a review of all the orders that are given by a judge or anybody, or the rulings that are given, for them to see if it's a glaring, outright, abuse of the process itself and that independence, then of course you make sure that person leaves the office. You see, right now, which is in the penal code, anybody who has a carnal knowledge of a child who's below the age of 18, age of maturity, is supposed to go to jail. So how does a pastor, or a man of the clock, who has abused a girl who's 16 years old, he sexually abused a girl who's 16 years old, how does he end up in what do you call it?
Still on the pulpit?
Yeah, still on the pulpit. All he has to do is that he has to go and preach. I don't know what message they want him to preach.
Against that particular offense he's committed?
Yeah. Go and, like telling a thug, a robber, who has robbed, with violence, everything else, we'll give you 6 years suspended, what do you call sentence. And all you're going to do is that you go around everywhere telling people how it's bad to engage in robbery and violence. That's not a punishment. The matter is not a civil matter, it's a criminal matter.
It's a criminal matter?
Yes. A criminal matter, you have no freedom of choosing the kind of punishment you're going to give. It's there in the penal code, you know what I mean? When you do these things, you have a kind of, you abuse, sexually, whatever, you take advantage, you go to jail.
I think even from the good book, if a person has been found perpetrating this kind of vice for the longest time and you've been taken to the clergy,
yes.
The clergy have talked to you, the deacons in the church have tried to make you reform, you were supposed to be excommunicated from the church, right? You're supposed not even to be on the pulpit in the first place, or whatever form of gospel of preaching these sexual offenses is concerned, even to schools. I'll be wary as a principal or even as a vice chancellor of any university to have a sexual offender really coming to talk about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you know. I mean, this is an indictment, even to the face of the family that has been affected by this.
In the developed world, when you serve, you're a pedophile. Basically, that's what they call pedophile.
He's a pedophile, yeah.
When you serve a sentence on those things, the list, the register of all those pedophiles is basically distributed, so that even if you become a neighbor, you rent a house in a certain neighborhood, everybody in the neighborhood should know that this man is not to be trusted. So always put a watch on him, put cameras on him, let him not be seen to be talking to young children.
But let's also be very candid and looking at the church, and Professor Macharia, also you can just join us on there. That is the story that we have priests sentenced to spread gospel of sexual offences act, and particularly the perpetration of these pedophiles emanating from the church, and especially the Catholic Church with the priests. I mean, the record is just going way off through the roof. Is the church culpable of, should I say, embroiling, especially the Catholic Church, embroiling in the moral decadence when it comes to pedophile, when it comes to homosexuality? It seems they have been particularly intent going with the storied history of the church, where we have even the Pope himself coming on the sharpest edge of a dilemma where they have to say, you know, it is open for us as well. We sort of will embrace our brothers and bless their marriage if it's a brother to brother marriage. I don't know where we're headed to, especially on this particular. But is this mainstream church culpable for the moral decadence that we have, especially when it comes to sexual offenses?
Dibal, we do not have the details, I think, of this story, other than what we are seeing
This
flashed.
is just a story that leads to the bigger picture that...
So what we can do is probably to do some conjecture at this point in time. And, you know, one, of course, is... was the authority within the church that made this decision, what exactly they base it on? Could it be based on the Hollywood story in the gospel, where the Pharisees of the old brought a woman they caught in the act before Jesus Christ, and you know, as they were condemning this lady, Christ went down with his finger and wrote the sins of these all others, and they disappeared from the scene. So nobody was ready to throw the first stone because they were also involved in the more or less the same acts like what the woman committed. Could it be that principle that informed the actions of you know, the church or the authorities that were concerned with this? We never know. But if we look at the ideal, really, is that if somebody has been caught and there is evidence that he's wayward in ways he conducts himself socially, especially dealing with the underage, I think the action bespeaks of some rot, in my view, within not just in the Catholic Church systems, but also in our own society. Because how is this guy going to conduct himself among the people who he has already offended, and even you know, to the parents of this young kid that he has abused? How are they going to relate? Or have they been compromised? You know, sometimes poverty dehumanizes some people. We have read of situations where children are abused and their parents are basically bribed to drop the charges against the perpetrators of such actions. But the bottom line, Dibal and my colleagues, is that there is something morally wrong with our society. You were even earlier talking about corruption. Maybe we'll come back to it.
Yeah, sure.
But there is something that we need to do about our socio, if I may call it so, DNA, because we seem to enjoy doing things that are morally wrong. Because if this happens within the church is actually a reflection, a microcosm of what our society is. Our politics, our leaders, they are an embodiment of who we are. Somebody said that a man resembles his environment more than his father. I think it's Napoleon Bonaparte who said that once upon a time, the king of France. And indeed, in our own midst, we need to do something about the moral fabric of our own society, in my view.
Right. Well, let's hear from Professor Mashara Monena. Good to see you. I don't know, what are your thoughts regarding this? We can just begin from there. And also, the U.S. really flagging Kenya as, especially from the public service, as most corrupt, driving away investors.
Well, the accusation of corruption is not new. It's a part of the DNA. The issue of abuse of faith is also not new. From time to time, we have this phenomenon. And in every religious organization, because churches are just religious organizations, and so are the mosques and others, you find abuse of all types, whether it's a question of thievery, people fighting for money, or some moral deviation. It's a constant. But last Monday I wrote an article asking whether Jesus would be happy if he can see what is being done in his name.
Yes.
So, in his name, 2,000 years later, would he agree with it? And of course, I've received some comments and saying, no, he will not agree with it. He will not be happy. So it is something that needs to be looked at, both from theological perspective and also the life, the cultural aspect. Because there is a cultural and there is a theological aspect. And both of them need to be examined. Let me also add about, now because you're talking about mainstream churches in particular, I think they are all guilty of negligence. There are cults within these churches. And the hierarchy appears to condone those cults because they operate with the knowledge of the system. Shakahola did not come from the sky. And in fact, you have some serious people defending it. In every one of the mainstream, let's say the mainstream churches, the Christian churches, so you have the Catholics, the Anglicans, the Presbyterians, the Methodists, the Baptists, the Seventh-day Adventists, the Quakers, all of them. You check them properly, there will be problems in there which are being covered up. And so you ask the leaders, why is this the case? Then they'll try to find some excuses or some reasons as to why they cannot do anything about it. So even the claims about Masonry, that some leaders in the state, as well as in the church, are part of the Masons. And we don't know what happens in the Masonry. There are rumors about it, but they are said to be very well networked.
Freemasons.
Yeah. There used to be an ambassador here, American ambassador, William Atwood.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The blacks and the reds.
Yeah, but he wrote a better book than that. About the twilights of a Cold War warrior, where he was talking about his escapades. And in one instance, he was talking about the Freemasons.
Yeah.
The power, they can change anything. And all they have to do is, if you are a member, you just invoke whatever it is. And all the people, it happened in France, when they were trying to debate a very serious issue, ideological. And he says that the Prime Minister or President, whoever it is, he assured Atwood, don't worry, all these people, it is going to go through. He was a total conservative and they were all radicals. And he was, how are you going to pass it? He said, don't worry, they are all Masons. So all I have to do is to invoke something and they all do what? Line up. So, and that's what he did. and it passed. He was trying to show the power of these courts and the funny things. They scare the leadership, or the leadership is beholden to them. Therefore, they dare not. So as we try to re-examine religious organizations, not just the churches, religious organizations, including the Hindus and the Baha'i and all. Are there things they should be doing better? And who should be the custodian of that doing better? Should it be the state? Or who? After all, they are licensed in Kenya or some other place. Therefore, the country responsible should have a say in some of those things.
Indeed. Right. So that is the current state of play. You wanted to add something?
Yes. This matter is the problem does not fall. I mean, let's talk about society in other contexts. But in the context of this is a priest who calls a girl. He calls her on her mobile phone and asks her to come to his house or come to the whatever within the parish where he was. She comes, and then when she comes to his place, somebody who was sitting with him, that person leaves and is excused. And then he serves alcohol to a 16-year-old girl and fondles her. The mother gets worried when she gets to know that her daughter is there and keeps calling incessantly and tells her to get out of the place. She goes, and then this matter is related by the girl to the mother. The matter comes before a magistrate, a senior magistrate. And the magistrate hands down a sentence of 7 years jail term, send him to Shimalatewa or to committee or anywhere else. He appeals against that sentence. And this is what the one appeal judge agrees with the verdict of guilt. And then decides, I'll just give you community work. This is called a community work, basically. You give community work to somebody who has a traffic offense, you know what I mean? You give a community work to somebody who, minor things. But not something with both a mens rea and and acts. You plan, you premeditate, and then you go ahead and still do it on a criminal matter like this. So in my opinion, that judge is not immediately called by the Chief Justice, given a serious dressing down, and moved out of the bench as soon as possible by the Judicial Service Commission after a prop is done internally. Then the judiciary is rotten. It's a criminal matter. It's rotten. 7 years, if they felt it was a very harsh sentence for somebody for fondling the girl, you could say 5 years, you could say 6 years, you get my point. But to tell him to go out there and go with the probation officer once a month, that judge has got to tell the country what was.
Yeah, we've seen other pedophiles, sexual offenders, of minors getting 20 years, 30 years.
Of course.
Yeah. So
I think that was even light in the first place. And here is the mother, here is the girl, is saying exactly what transpired. You don't serve alcohol to a 16-year-old girl and then go ahead and do the awful things that he has done. And then if the mother had not kept on calling incessantly, if you look at the reporting, then of course maybe something else would have happened. Would have had, he's going a step further. And then a judge says, no, you can go and do a social work in there. No, that judge is corrupt, so get rid of that judge. That's why I keep saying that, look, the judiciary has a problem. So that problem, if the judiciary wants us to spare them of the blames that we do and the castigation we do, the judiciary has to show you can have what you call the independence of sentence, the way she has done right now. But that also does not come from the books of law in Bhutan or Nepal or any other country for that matter. We have the books here. We have the laws in this country. The penal code is there. So what's the basis of sentencing to social work a pedophile? You see what I mean? And that basically is where I have a problem. I have a problem with the judiciary in this country. And I'm placing squarely at the doorsteps. No, we have a society, we have a morality, we have a church, we have all those things. I mean, those are secondary things. The way the church deals with this person is something that is going to be, at a later date, become subject to scrutiny, and that scrutiny itself. You see, when you take away responsibility from where the responsibility and you spread it, you water down everything. All the society is bad. Or we have these other issues, or he's not the only one who has done that. You know what I mean? How many others have gotten away with that? Those are not excuses. Let's deal with this thing right now, and let's find out from the judiciary why this is permissive or permitted.
I think this is very systemic, and it's a very important conversation that we are having, because if we don't really address this, it just tapers off. We'll continue with life. But can you picture that we have Father Dominic Mulinzioka, where the judge says that we'll spread this gospel at least once a month on a Sunday. This task will be closely monitored by the parish head and probation officer, who are then required to compile a report for the court. So I'm imagining he comes on a Sunday, he stands on the podium, the pulpit, and he's there, with ceremonial liturgical, processes of a church, and he stands again and teaches about sexual offense. You are the mother of his daughter. You're in the congregation. Dr. Mbogi, I'm talking to you, and Father Malim as well, Masharia. The mother with the daughter, they're in the congregation where this particular father is actually teaching about sexual offense. Don't you think that a picture is such a despicable picture, first of all? Because you, as a priest who has been perpetrating this evil, you are not even supposed to be on that particular pulpit or observing any ceremonial services or processes in the church at the end of the day. You're supposed to be secluded, right? Until disciplinary action has been taken against you, you've reformed, or if this has been a persistent occurrence, you're excommunicated from the church. Isn't that what the good book says? I know maybe most of you are not very churchy, but I wonder, for me, I think this is a travesty of justice to this family at the end of the day.
You should be asking the church.
I should be asking the church.
Yes.
So the church should tell us what.
The church.
No, Deepal, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist, and I'm actually an elder in a church here in Nairobi.
Yeah, so this comes to your attention, then how will you address it?
The point is, it's actually wrong. It is immoral. It's unacceptable for the judge to have taken that kind of direction. It's an insult, not just to the parents of this young girl, but also to the girl herself. And also it's an indictment to how low we have sunk as a society, and also as a judicial system. That's why I said earlier that for want of a better phraseology, this is just like sending a hyena to teach goats on how not to eat meat over lunch in the world. And it shouldn't have happened that way. And probably if we had the judgment that was used and all the details that these decisions were based away from the reports in the media, then probably we'll get a better picture. But from the facts that are provided, I think we need to very seriously relook at some individuals within our judicial system. Some individuals within the judicial system should be examined very carefully, and asked very hard questions whether they understand what the good of society is all about. I look at the priest Muli, and he deserves some level of forgiveness and all that, but that is just something that will be done behind closed doors. Yes, the religious philosophy that we are all sinful and we are falling short of the glory of God, that's our principle. But then when it comes to an outright offense like this one, where somebody who needed to know better feeds a young girl on alcohol, and I would expect what happened after the young girl took the alcohol. She must have lost control of herself. But thanks to the vigilant mother who kept on, calling and persisting, as the media is saying. So Dibal, this is the rot, as I said earlier, in our society. It's unbelievable, it's unthinkable, and it is something that calls for self-re-examination, both at the level of the church and the level of the judiciary and the society in general. Are our children safe? I'm a father of a daughter. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are our children safe? Mm-hmm. Or we want to take recourse to the traditional systems. I know that there are some societies where the parents of a girl like this one, they have the right to discipline the guy.
Take the law into their own hands.
Take the law into their own hands. Is that the direction we are going to go? Or if this guy goes to spread the gospel in quotes, and the everyday Kenyans take the law into their hands, are we going to blame them?
Right.
That's the $1 million questions we need to ask ourselves. So this undermines the confidence that we have in the judiciary, and it can also affect the image of the church in general.
All right, and I think this calls, as we take a short break, for us as a country, as parents, as church leaders, as public leaders, to really look keenly, especially where we have men that we've entrusted that they are the epitome of good character, the epitome, or the epitomizes, of course, some nobility of character that we can trust at the end of the day, that we can let our children go to Sunday school, we can let our kids go to, some of the church services, youth services, and all activities that are in church, in the mosque, anywhere. And we have such kind of incidences happening where a father who we are trusting that should be all the wiser as far as, morality is concerned. At the end of the day, we can say, human is to err, but for how long can this be headlining our dailies and publications every other time that we have from a church? These are the perpetrators who are doing this because our girls, our children are gullible, our boys are gullible. It's not even just the girls, even for the boys. And I'm given to understand that the young girl was serving, she was an altar server, it says here, and the mother was seeing all these red flags, all right? But because he's a father, sometimes you doubt yourself whether you think, maybe what I'm thinking is not what is really happening. But at the end of the day, we've all fallen. We're all sinful. Even for the highest person that we think is a saint, so to speak, at the end of the day, we are all having all this fallen nature in us, and we struggle to keep straight. But this is a travesty of justice, and I think it should be relooked. If you're found guilty of pedophile, then you should be sentenced according to the law. Leniency, as now telling us to come and preach about sexual offense, I think this is just offensive to every Kenyan that is waking up this morning. So we take a short break. When we circle back, of course, we shall be looking at other stories as well. Today is all about global matters. We shall be looking at what is happening in Senegal with the installation of the new president right now, that is President Faye. Also in Somalia, they had a constitutional amendment, so to speak. And Puntland right now is taking or raising hesitations regarding that because they're saying we want to be an independent state, so to speak. We shall give you gritty details of this on the other side of a break. We'll take a short break right now. You're watching Global Today.